Good morning, everyone. Today we are talking about risk and fear and bravery. As it is Black History Month, and as we have conversations about the eighth principle and white supremacy and the important work we have to do around justice, this has had me reflecting on the different kinds of risk that we undertake. For some of us, there is risk and bravery in the everyday. We don't get a choice. For others of us, we get to decide whether we put ourselves on the line. And as a community, I believe that we have a responsibility to always put ourselves behind one another. I wanted to raise up this story of Audrey Hendricks, who felt that she had a responsibility to take quite a big risk for a 9-year-old. And this is The Youngest Marcher by Cynthia Levinson and Vanessa Brantley Newton. Whenever Mike flew into town, Audrey and her mama cooked barbecued ribs, stewed greens, and sweet potato souffle. Other few folks knew Mike as Dr. King or Martin. The Hendrickses used his nickname. After dinner, they talked about wiping out the segregation laws that kept Black and white folks apart in Birmingham, and Audrey just had to speak up. She intended to go places and do things like anybody else. I want to eat my ice cream inside at Newberry's. I want to sit downstairs at the Alabama, and I don't want hand-me-down school books. Audrey knew all about segregation. She knew to pay the driver at the front of the bus and then step off and walk around to the back door. Drink from the water fountain with the dirty bowl and warm water. Front row seats, cool water, new books that crackled when you opened them. Laws said those were for white folks. She told her mama, "That's not right." She had to make things right, but what could she do? When Mike visited her church, he proclaimed, "An unjust law is no law at all." And Audrey knew what he meant. If a law is unjust, disobey it. Picket those white stores. March to protest those unfair laws. Fill the jails. Fill Birmingham's jails so that policemen can't squeeze in one more person. Pack cells so tight that police will have to quit arresting people for demanding their rights. Audrey twisted in her pew to see which grown-ups would volunteer to go to jail. But they mostly stayed silent, eyes staring at their feet, hands on their knees, worried about losing jobs, getting evicted, and being beaten by police. One night, Reverend Jim Bevel announced a new idea. If grown-ups won't do it, fill the jails with children. Audrey leapt to her feet. "I want to go to jail." 2 mornings later, her parents drove her to the 16th Street Baptist Church. Hundreds of big kids called out to friends and crowded around each other. She was the only protester from her school, the youngest child in the whole church, and she knew no one. Audrey straightened up. She was going to break a law and go to jail to make things right. Clutching a protest sign, Audrey marched out the door. Half a block from the church, a white policeman stopped Audrey. He pointed out a police van. Sentence, 1 week in juvenile hall. Audrey was locked into a day room with 24 other girls, all older, all bigger, all strangers. Audrey sat down alone. She was yelled at and cried alone. She was hungry and tired. For mealtime, soupy, oily, tasteless grits. At night, a bare mattress with one thin sheet for a cover. No fresh underwear, no clean pinafore, no toothbrush. Every day, more kids crowded into the day room. Some days, many of them arrived sopping wet. A girl explained that firemen aimed powerful hoses at the children. Surging water spun them off their feet and down the street. Dogs were sent after them, too. They got up and kept marching anyway, until they too were sent to jail. By Audrey's 5th day in detention, the police couldn't squeeze in one more person. "We filled up all the rooms! We filled up all the rooms!" Audrey practically jumped up and down. She was so proud. After 7 days, Audrey went home. Her mama and daddy wrapped their arms tight around her. Businesses soon agreed to many of their demands for desegregation, and 2 months later, the segregation laws in Birmingham were lifted, and their actions paved way for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. At the age of 16 in 1969, Audrey attended her first desegregated school. Our journey for justice and equity is far from over, but I think we can learn a lot from a little girl who knew the risks and also knew the power of a collective force.